There are betrayals that don't need a knife, just a note left on the kitchen counter. We went on a cruise. You handle him. And when the door shuts, a dying stepfather is abandoned in an ice-cold house shivering in the dark, as if his life is nothing more than an inconvenience to be dealt with. The most terrifying part isn't the cold, it's the united cruelty of the people who still call themselves family. People love to say, don't get involved in family business. But when something inhumane happens inside the home, is silence still kindness? Or has it become complicity? At that point, does a person save a life and walk away like nothing happened, or save him and help uncover everything they thought they'd buried? Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always amazing to see where our stories travel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next twist in this journey. Now, I'd like to invite you to listen to his confession. Thanksgiving in Medina always had a way of looking perfect from the outside. That Thursday was no different. The sky over the cul-de-sac was a watercolor of gray-blue, the air crisp enough to fog my breath as I stood in front of my parents' house. I held a paper cup of coffee in both hands, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. Through the window I saw the glow of golden lights spilling across the foyer, wreaths hung just so, candles flickering on the dining table. Picture perfect. Or more accurately, picture deceptive. I hadn't been home in almost a year. Not out of rebellion, just preservation. But I came this time out of courtesy. Thanksgiving. Show face. Be polite. Leave before dessert. The door opened before I could knock. My mother Marianne greeted me with her trademark hosting smile, polished bright and entirely detached from sincerity. "Ronan," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. "You made it. You're right on time." Everyone's seated. By everyone, she meant the usual suspects, my father Dale at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up like he'd carved the turkey himself, Bryn glowing in the seat beside him, and two guests I didn't recognize, likely friends of the family, invited to fill chairs and add pressure. The table looked like something out of a holiday magazine. Maple leaves wound into a centerpiece, golden chargers, and perfectly placed cloth napkins. The scent of roasted garlic and sage hung thick in the air. I sat where I always sat, off to the side, slightly out of the light, the family satellite. A guest in my own bloodline. The meal began with the usual toasts. My mother raised a glass to health, growth, and strong family ties. The irony nearly choked me. Dale added something about legacy and building for the future, all while nodding at Bryn. She glowed under their attention, talking animatedly about her boutique. "We're looking to expand, maybe even a second location by spring." Everyone cooed and clapped. A woman I didn't know asked, "That must be so expensive, though. Retail rent in Seattle is no joke." Bryn smiled too fast, glanced under the table, and gave a tight, almost imperceptible squeeze to her phone. Her nails tapped the screen before she tucked it back into her lap. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine. Marianne stepped in smoothly. "Oh, she has it under control. She's being very strategic with funding." I caught it then, a flicker of unease in Bryn's eyes. Something wasn't under control. No one asked about me, not really. Dale threw a few performative questions in my direction. "Still messing around with your gadgets, Ronan? Got any plans to finally do something serious with all that tech?" I gave short answers. No mention of clients, no mention of revenue. I've learned that nothing good comes from giving them ammunition. Then Dale cleared his throat and set his wine down. The table quieted. His voice cut through the low hum of silverware like a gavel. "Let's not pretend we all don't know what's going on here. Bryn's building a future. She's working hard. She's disciplined. Meanwhile, you're still chasing... what ideas?" He didn't wait for me to answer. "I mean, at what point do you stop playing and start living in the real world? You're 30, Ronan. If you can't take care of yourself, maybe it's time to go live in the streets." The room froze. One of the guests inhaled sharply. Bryn hid her smirk behind her wine glass. Marianne adjusted the napkins like she hadn't heard a thing. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. I looked at my father, then at the golden centerpiece, then back to him. Something cracked inside me, but not the way he hoped. I didn't break. I smiled, not bitterly, not sarcastically. Just peacefully. Thanks for dinner, I said, rising slowly. I smoothed out my blazer. Really? The food was great. Dale blinked. Marianne still wouldn't look up. Bryn avoided eye contact. The guests shifted awkwardly in their seats. I walked to the front door, pulled it open, and let the cold rush meet my skin. They didn't know I made $25 million a year. They didn't know about the company I'd built, the clients I'd signed, or the deals I'd sealed while they were too busy calling me a disappointment. I didn't need them to know. 3 weeks later, they would. The quiet of my penthouse hit different that evening. Seattle's skyline shimmered just beyond the glass, each window below me lit like a tiny flame. I stood barefoot, nursing a mug of tea, letting the steam rise against the glass. It was hard to reconcile how Dale's words could echo in a space like this. Everything here was mine. Designed, paid for, earned. And still my body flinched at his voice in my memory. That's what trauma does. It stays in your reflexes even after you've outgrown the story. My phone buzzed. Tessa. Tessa, your mom's been telling people you went bankrupt. I stared at the screen, then let out a low, humorless chuckle. Tessa said you're couch hopping, sleeping at a friend's place, said you had a mental breakdown over your startup collapsing. I closed my eyes, leaned back against the window. The bitterness in my mouth wasn't from the tea. Me where Tessa church, lunch after service, book club last night. She's making it sound pitiful, like they tried everything and you just slipped through the cracks. I paced to the kitchen, the polished floors cool underfoot. Every surface gleamed. My prototype sat in the center of the kitchen table, clean lines, brushed steel, the culmination of years of work. I whispered to no one. They don't want the truth. Tessa's next message came with a weight. Tessa Dale said you were begging for money, said they had to cut you off or you'd bleed them dry. It clicked. They weren't just slandering me. They were positioning me, making themselves look generous, helpless, victimized. They needed the story to fit their next move. Because when the time came to explain why I wasn't involved, why they had no choice, they wanted sympathy. Tessa Bryn's boutique is hemorrhaging cash. Rumor is she's behind on 3 vendor payments. Lease is on the line. Of course. The funding. Keats family tradition, when money's tight, find a scapegoat. Or better, an unwitting co-signer. I walked into my office. Whiteboards lined the walls filled with plans for Q1, launch dates, tech briefings, investor strategy, and then it hit me, if they were spreading a story about me being broke, what better setup for using my name without permission? They didn't expect anyone would believe I was financially competent enough to notice. Tessa O. and Miles asked about you. Weirdly. Kept asking if you were okay, like he expected something to go wrong. Miles, Bryn's business partner. Charming, evasive, always grinning too wide. If he was checking on me, it wasn't out of concern. It was fear. I opened a blank notepad, typed 3 lines. They're telling a story. They need money. They'll use my name if I don't stop them. I thought I was just walking away from a broken dinner table. Turns out I was stepping into the middle of a pre-written play, one where I was cast as the deadbeat villain. They didn't know the real script was about to flip. The Monday after Thanksgiving broke with a sky that didn't bother to lie. Heavy gray and cold enough to cut through wool. I should have known the day wouldn't let me coast. We were 2 weeks out from product launch, back-to-back meetings, final sprints, investor calls. My calendar was booked in 15-minute blocks, my mind locked in execution mode. That morning I stepped into our downtown office, nodding at the team, running on caffeine and repetition. At 12:03 p.m. Between a supply chain sync and a pitch deck finalization, I opened my inbox to find the subject line that ended the routine. Verification required. Guarantor authorization urgent. At first I thought it was a scam, something automated and poorly aimed, but the sender address was legitimate, a major lending institution I recognized. I clicked. The PDF attachment opened slowly, like a door into a room I didn't know I owned. It was a guarantor contract. A $480,000 renovation loan taken out in 2021. Purpose business expansion. Bryn Keats Boutique. Borrower, Bryn Keats guarantor, Ronan Keats. My name. My full legal name. On a document I had never seen before. The PDF was clean polished official. The kind of thing I'd signed 100 times before, except I hadn't signed this one. At least, not knowingly. The signature looked like mine at a glance, but I knew every flick and pause of my own pen. This one was too smooth, too eager. The slant was just a hair off. The R too tall, the finish too round. And that sick feeling, the one that starts in your lungs before your brain catches up, began to form. I scrolled further. The email stated that the loan was at high risk of default, and that the guarantor me would be pursued for repayment if the borrower failed to resolve the balance within 30 days. I just stared at the screen for a moment. Everything around me faded. The murmur of phones, the slap of keyboards, the click of heels in the hallway. None of it mattered. I wasn't angry yet. I was something colder. Something closer to betrayed. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out without a word. Back at the penthouse, the sky was starting to bruise. Seattle was in its usual state of rainy apathy. I turned on a single lamp in my office, poured a glass of water I wouldn't drink, and stared at the email again. Who had done it? To forge my signature, they'd need access to more than just my name. They'd need copies of past documents. They'd need old forms, scans. They'd need familiarity, proximity, family. I tried to remember the last time I'd handed anything over. Maybe 3 years ago. Marianne had asked for a scanned signature for a donation receipt or something church-related. I hadn't thought twice. Who would now? I knew better. I called the lender, identified myself, waited through the hold, music heart ticking like a slow fuse. A woman answered. Professional, direct. Yes, Mr. Keats, you are listed as the sole guarantor on this loan. No, I said I never signed that document. She paused. We'll flag the file for potential identity fraud. But I have to ask formally, do you believe your signature was used without your consent? Yes, I said. Absolutely. She sighed like this wasn't the first time she'd had this conversation. It happens more than you'd think, she said. That hit me harder than I expected. Not just because I wasn't special, but because it made my family ordinary in the worst way. Not just cold, not just cruel, but criminal, predictable, common. I asked for the full file. She sent it within minutes. It wasn't just a signature. There was an in-person verification listed. Supposedly, I'd appeared at a branch office in Tacoma in June 2021 with ID and signed in front of a notary. Except I'd been in Austin that day, launching a pilot with our partner firm. I still had the boarding pass saved in my travel app. The timeline didn't just crack, it collapsed. I stared at the document again. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a clerical error or a slip. This was planned. They'd built a story around me, a supporting role I didn't know I was playing. A prop in Bryn's collapse, a shield. They used my name, my ID, my signature, my silence. Not anymore. I picked up my phone and called Seth Aldridge. He picked up on the second ring. Ronan. My name was used to guarantee a $480,000 loan in 2021, I said. My voice was steady, almost gentle. The signature is fake. There was a pause, a long one. Send me everything, Seth said. If it's forged, this isn't just civil. It's criminal. I walked out to the balcony, rain pattering on the railing lights blinking across the city. 3 weeks ago, Dale told me to go live in the streets. They might have signed my name, but they had no idea what that name could really do. It was close to midnight when Seth called back. I was still in the same chair, still in the same shirt, still trying to make the facts bend into a shape that didn't hurt. Send me every legitimate signature you've used in the last 5 years, he said. Real estate, bank, company records. Anything notarized. I opened the safe, laid out the documents like an autopsy, mortgage agreements, stock, grant contracts, bank signature cards. I took pictures, scanned them, uploaded them into a shared drive. Then I opened a spreadsheet and began mapping 2021 month by month, trip by trip, signature by signature. Where I'd been, who I was with, what I could prove. I wasn't chasing doubt. I was building a record. Seth pinged. Got the docs. Cross-referencing now. At 12:47 a.m., he called again. They logged you as appearing in person, Ronan, he said. The lender's records say you were physically present at the signing with ID. That's a lie, I said. Then it's fraud. No question. The air around me changed, got denser, sharper. The kind of air that makes decisions for you. Who had access to your ID back then, Seth asked. Old documents, signature scans. Only one answer came to mind, my family. There'd been that time I sent Dad my lease paperwork when I moved out. The time Marianne asked for a scan of my driver's license to register me for the alumni dinner. All those innocent favors. All those cracks they'd been collecting. I opened my email archive, found the PDF I'd sent Marianne in 2020. There it was, my signature, isolated, clean, high resolution. They'd saved it. They'd used it. Seth's voice broke back in. There's something else. He shared his screen, a breakdown of the loan disbursement. Line items should have been straightforward renovation costs, contractor fees. But there were red flags, consulting charges with no firm name, duplicate payments, deposits to shell companies with unclear affiliations. This wasn't just about the boutique, Seth said. They were siphoning funds. Maybe for Bryn's debts. Maybe for Marianne's obsession with appearances. Maybe just because they thought they'd get away with it. And they almost did. Until they got greedy. Until the payment stopped. Until I found the email. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. Dad's telling people you've always had a temper, that you sign things in a rush and forget. I stared at the message. My own flesh and blood laying the groundwork to say I did this to myself. They're prepping to flip it on me, I said. Seth nodded grimly. It's a standard move. If they think this will get public or legal, they'll try to undermine your memory, your judgment, your credibility. They'll say I'm unstable. They already are. I closed my eyes. Felt the shape of every insult from that Thanksgiving table shift into something heavier. Something sharp. Another email from the lender arrived while we were still on the call. Subject escalation, guarantor asset review, pending default. The default date had been moved up, 15 days. They weren't just running out of money. They were running out of time. They let it go this far on purpose, I said, so that I'd be forced to absorb the impact. Seth didn't argue. What do you want to do? We fight it. Then I'll file an immediate fraud dispute. We'll request a freeze on recovery actions tied to your assets. But that's only the first front. And the second, Seth paused. We take control of the loan. You intercept the default, acquire the debt legally, and turn it into leverage. I stared out the window again. Seattle shimmered in the rain, quiet, indifferent, alive. I want both, I said. I want to freeze the damage and flip the table. Seth gave a single low breath. Then let's go. As we ended the call, I gathered the documents on my desk and sorted them into two piles, the truth and what they'd made of it. They thought they could write my story for me. But now I had the pen back. Capitol Hill always had a certain charm in the rain. Clean sidewalks, slick with drizzle, indie boutiques trying hard to look effortless, coffee shops with fogged windows and playlists full of soft jazz. But that morning all I saw was the boutique, Bryn's boutique, sitting too still in a city that never slept. It was just after 11 on a weekday, a time when a thriving shop should be buzzing. Instead, the floor inside looked deserted, save for one bored associate scrolling her phone behind the front counter. The window display was picture-perfect but too curated, like someone was trying to impress an investor, not attract customers. A discreet sale sign hung on the corner of the window, printed in an elegant serif font that hoped not to look desperate. But it was desperate. A half-opened box sat behind the counter tag, still hanging tissue paper crumpled like someone had abandoned the task midway. On the wall behind her, I saw a calendar with 3 events crossed out in red ink. They were bleeding. Quietly. Elegantly. But they were bleeding. I stood outside just long enough for the rain to settle into the collar of my coat before turning away. I wasn't here to stage a confrontation. Not yet. I was halfway to the car when my phone buzzed an email from Marianne. Subject, just checking in. Hi, sweetheart. Haven't heard from you since the holiday. I know things got a little tense. Just want to make sure you're okay. I hate seeing the family fractured like this. There are a few little paperwork things that need signing, nothing serious, just clean up stuff with the house. Would be so helpful if you could swing by to take care of it. Love, Mom. Clean up stuff. I forwarded it to Seth without replying. He called within the hour. She's fishing, he said, or rather laying bait. The language is soft, but I'd bet good money those documents are designed to establish you as a consenting party. Maybe even retroactively, to bury the fraud, to make it disappear entirely. If you sign anything that implies prior awareness or agreement, we lose the leverage. We lose the case. I didn't ask how often he'd seen this move before. I didn't need to. Families like mine ran playbooks. This one just happened to be laminated in fake smiles and half-truths. At 2:12 p.m., another text came in. From Miles. Miles, can we talk? Just 10 minutes. Not about money. Promise. I stared at the message for a long beat. He wasn't the type to reach out. He barely spoke at family functions, always hovering a step behind Bryn, polite but distant, passive, Switzerland in designer boots. I chose a coffee shop 2 blocks from the boutique. Corner table, near a window, neutral territory. He arrived late, damp from the rain, eyes sunken with the kind of tired that doesn't come from work. He spotted me immediately but didn't smile, just nodded like we were about to negotiate a truce in a war we didn't start. I appreciate you coming, he said, pulling off his coat. 10 minutes, I said. Start talking. He sat back, palms open on the table. They're lying to me. I said nothing. Bryn keeps saying everything's fine. That some outside lender is handling it. That he trailed off, jaw tight. That you're helping. I didn't flinch. I didn't offer clarity. I let him work through it. I'm not stupid, Ronan, he continued. I've seen loan notices tucked under receipts. I've overheard phone calls. At first I thought she was just hiding financial stress to protect me, but then I heard Dale on the phone one night. I leaned in. What did he say? Miles looked out the window like he didn't want to be seen repeating it. Ronan'll help. He doesn't have a choice. There it was, said out loud. He doesn't have a choice. Not a hope, not a plan, a certainty, like they owned me. I kept my face blank. Anything else, he hesitated. Marianne's the one pulling strings. She's not just covering for them, she's organizing it. My hand stiffened slightly on the ceramic mug. I overheard her telling Bryn not to mention your name around people. She told a group at dinner a few weeks ago that you were going through something and shouldn't be pressured. But it didn't sound like concern, it sounded like a warning. Like she was painting you into a box before you even walked into the room. She's building a narrative, I said. If I speak out, they'll say I'm unstable. He nodded slowly. I think that's exactly what they're doing. I let the silence stretch, let the rain fill it. Then he added something that froze my breath mid-chest. She used to keep a folder in the boutique office. Bryn. Had your signature in it, like a scanned version. Said it was for when she needed to reference old lease documents or something. I blinked. What kind of folder? Just a clear plastic sleeve. I think it was in one of the locked drawers back in the first office. She moved it when they remodeled. That was it. The source. The template. The place they pulled it from. I could almost see it, my signature printed clean, waiting to be turned into a weapon. I kept my voice even. Do you know if she still has it? He shook his head. No idea. But she used to be meticulous about keeping stuff like that. A beat passed. There's more, he added. Summer 2021. Bryn came home glowing one day, said, it's all taken care of. Said the family had it covered. She and Marianne had just gotten back from Tacoma. Bryn told me she'd met someone who handles paperwork fast. I didn't think anything of it back then, but now I did. Tacoma, mid-2021. The same date logged in the forged lender documents, a notary office that supposedly saw me sign in person. I reached for my phone and started entering the timeline into a secure folder Seth had set up. June 2021, Tacoma, Bryn plus Marianne. Post-meeting comment, handled. I looked at Miles. If I asked you for a written statement one day, would you be willing? He hesitated but nodded. I'm not trying to destroy her, I said quietly. But I won't let them destroy me either. If you hear anything, especially from the lender, text me immediately. He stood to leave, pausing before heading for the door. For what it's worth, he said, I never believed the stuff they said about you. I didn't answer. I watched him disappear into the gray mist curling around him like the end of a scene. I didn't go into the boutique. I didn't need to. I already had the opening thread. And I was going to pull until the whole thing unraveled. The first strike wasn't legal. It wasn't financial. It was whispered. Tessa called me just after 9 a.m., her voice sharp with something between disbelief and disgust. Marianne was at the St. Agnes brunch this morning, she said. She told 3 women 3 that you've been under emotional strain lately, that she's worried you might spiral, her exact words. He's been isolating. We're afraid he might do something drastic. I felt the bile rise. They're not just setting up a defense, I said. They're trying to preemptively discredit me. Exactly. It was a social maneuver one older generations perfected: wrap the knife in concern, then twist it slowly while claiming to pray for you. I wrote down the quote, filed it. I'd need it later. By noon, Dale called. No greeting, no small talk. Just, you need to come home. We'll talk this out face to face. Define talk. There are some documents that need to be resolved. You don't air family business in public. That's not how we raised you. I could practically hear the smugness oozing through the receiver. You do this the right way, Ronan, he said. You keep it quiet, you keep us out of the papers, and we'll make sure you don't come out of this looking like some desperate bidder. Say the word. Silence. You were about to say, loser, right? He exhaled. Whatever. You want to burn it all down, fine, but don't expect us to protect you when the headlines hit. Click. I saved the voicemail to a locked folder. 5 minutes later, Marianne struck. Email subject. Just a formality. Attached was a 3-page PDF. Seth scanned it within seconds and called immediately. They're getting sloppy, he said. Buried in the middle clause is language that states you voluntarily affirm and acknowledge shared fiscal responsibility in prior agreements. It's not just about the loan. If you sign this, you're affirming you were involved the whole time. They're trying to clean the slate. They're trying to make the forgery disappear by making you retroactively complicit. I didn't reply, just watched the Seattle skyline blur beyond my window. Rain again. Of course. They think pressure will make you crack, he added. They're wrong. By afternoon, the real bomb dropped. A call from the lender's legal rep, tight-clipped and brutal. We're issuing a formal acceleration, she said. Due to unresolved red flags, the loan is being called in full. Immediate action is required. If no resolution is reached, the default process begins within 10 business days. 10 days. I called Seth the second we hung up. They're forcing it, he said. Someone inside that operation is letting this implode so it pressures you into reacting. Or confessing, I muttered. Or paying. Or signing something you shouldn't. He started sketching out options, legal templates, emergency injunction language. I could hear the tension in his breath. He knew how fast this was moving now. So did I. Then a short buzz from Miles lit my screen. Miles' supplier just showed up screaming. Staff hours cut. Bryn won't talk. Marianne took over her phone. Something's wrong. Asterisk. I stared at the message. Wrong was an understatement. They were drowning. And when people drown, they claw at anything to stay afloat, even if it means dragging someone else under. At 6:42 p.m. Dale texted. Dale, dinner tomorrow at Osteria Luca. Marianne and I will be there. So will a lender rep. It's time to act like family. I stared at it. Let the words settle. not a dinner. An ambush. They'll try to record you, Seth warned. Make you say something they can manipulate. Or worse, slip paperwork into a casual conversation. You so much as agree to help verbally, they'll run with it. I'm not going. You should let them think you are. That night we drafted 3 documents. 1. A formal dispute of signature validity citing forgery. 2. A demand for immediate preservation of all documents, emails, and financial communications, litigation hold. 3. A conditional offer of acquisition should default proceed. I would make a legal motion to assume controlling interest in the boutique and all associated assets. They think you're cornered, Seth said. I'm not cornered. I turned to the window, watching night settle over the city. They brought this storm thinking I'd drown in it, I said quietly. But I'm not drowning. I'm tracking the wind. We would let the default come. And when it did, I'd be the one holding the pen. Not to sign. To take back everything they built on my name. Juniper and Ash sat quietly on a corner downtown, the kind of restaurant built for conversations people didn't want overheard. Heavy wood doors, dim amber light, thick walls that absorbed sound. At 7 sharp I arrived early, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted control over the room before anyone else stepped into it. Seth was already there, seated at the private table we'd reserved. He didn't greet me with small talk. He simply slid the folder into place, centered, aligned, deliberate. Inside it were months of lies, years of entitlement, and every document that stripped my family of the story they'd been telling themselves. Loan agreements from 2021, signature comparisons, lender correspondence, a clean chronological timeline, and finally, 2 pages titled, plainly, Options. I sat down and took a breath. Not to steady myself, but to remind myself why I was here. This wasn't about humiliation. It wasn't about revenge. It was about making it impossible for them to pretend this never happened. They arrived together just like they always did. Marianne walked in first posture, straight hair, perfect face, arranged into the same expression she wore at charity dinners and church fundraisers. Dale followed, shoulders tight, eyes scanning the room like he expected someone else to be there. Someone from the bank. Someone he could lean on. Bryn came last, eyes glassy, makeup hastily fixed, jaw set as if she'd been rehearsing strength all afternoon. They barely acknowledged me. Marianne offered a thin smile. Dale nodded once. Bryn didn't look at me at all. Marianne took the lead as expected. I'm glad we could all sit down, she said, folding her hands. There's been a lot of misunderstanding. Emotions were high, things were said that shouldn't have been. Families go through rough patches. Dale leaned back in his chair. The lender's been unreasonable. We're here to fix that. I said nothing. I let them keep talking because people reveal the most when they think they still have the upper hand. Seth waited until Marianne finished her carefully practiced monologue before speaking. I should clarify something, he said calmly. I don't represent the lender. Dale frowned. Then why are you here? I represent Ronan. The air changed. Seth placed the folder flat on the table and opened it. Ronan Keats is now the acquiring party on the loan in question. He controls the debt, the enforcement process, and all assets attached to it. No one moved. Dale's face drained of color. Marianne's hand froze halfway to her glass. Bryn inhaled sharply, her eyes finally snapping to mine, wide and disoriented, like she'd just woken up in the wrong life. I leaned forward slightly. Thanksgiving? I said, my voice even. You told me to go live in the streets. Dale opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. 3 days later I continued, you told people at church I was homeless, that I failed, that I was unstable. Marianne shook her head weakly. We were worried about you. And in 2021 I said, turning a page, you used my name to guarantee a loan without my consent. Silence pressed down on the table. This isn't about the boutique, I said. It's about you treating my identity like shared property. Dale's voice came back sharp, defensive. You're blowing this out of proportion. You've always been dramatic. You're doing this to punish us. Marianne reached for the familiar angle. You've been under stress, Ronan. Anyone would misinterpret things. Seth slid 1 page forward. This, he said, is the agreement Marianne sent Ronan last week. The one asking him to sign family paperwork. It includes language that would have made him voluntarily responsible for the loan. Marianne's composure cracked for half a second. Just enough. If he had signed, I said quietly, the forged signature would disappear. That's why you wanted it. Bryn pushed her chair back abruptly. You have money, she snapped. Why are you doing this? You don't need any of this. I looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time in years. I don't need the money, I said. I need my name. I need boundaries. Seth closed the folder and slid the final pages forward. You have two options, he said. Option 1, sell the property, clear the debt, and release Ronan from all legal exposure. Option 2, Ronan retains ownership, and you operate under a formal lease with no familial involvement. Dale stared at the papers. You're making us rent our own building. It's not your building, I said. Not anymore. Marianne's voice trembled. We're your family. You taught me exactly how to do this, I replied. By doing it to me first. They stood to leave in silence. Bryn hesitated at the door. You could have helped another way, she said. I did, I said. I stopped letting you use me. I walked out into the night feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Quiet. The 7 days that followed were the loudest silence of my life. No frantic calls, no tearful apologies, no dramatic confrontations, just paperwork. Each morning Seth sent updates, requests for clarification, attempts to renegotiate. All of them routed back through me now. All of them denied politely, cleanly, without emotion. Tessa filled in the gaps. Marianne stopped attending brunch. Dale missed 2 church events in a row. People started asking questions. The story they'd told about me no longer matched the shape of their lives. On the 7th morning, Seth called. They've decided to sell. I closed my eyes. The property went on the market within hours. Quietly, no announcement, no celebration. Just an asset being stripped of meaning. The paperwork to release my name was finalized that afternoon. I signed where it mattered under supervision with witnesses. This time, my signature meant exactly what it said. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't choosing between right and wrong, it's choosing to walk away quietly, even when the world never gave you the apology you deserved. We've just heard a story about betrayal wrapped in family where silence was louder than screams, and where dignity wasn't taken back through revenge but through boundaries. And maybe that's what healing really is, not proving who you are to those who never saw you but finally seeing yourself without their lens. What Ronan chose wasn't easy. It wasn't flashy, but it was honest. And for those of us who've ever been used, overlooked, or asked to keep the peace at the cost of our own name, his choice speaks volumes. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is not to win the argument, but to take back our story and stop letting others write it for us. If any part of this story sat with you or reminded you of something unspoken in your own life, and if you feel like sharing, the comments are open. We read every word. And if you're new here, subscribing isn't just following a channel, it's joining a space where stories matter, and where listening is an act of kindness. Thanks for being here with us today. We'll see you again soon whenever you're ready.